Hello, Dog Nation. It's Brandon Adams, the host of DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. I'm really glad you're with us today. We have a very fun show coming up. I'm really excited about the fact we're going to welcome in former Georgia linebacker, and it still seems a little weird saying that, but former Georgia linebacker, the Butkus Award winner for 2017, Roquan Smith, going to be here on DawgNation Daily today. In fact, we're actually going to begin the official broadcast with Roquan Smith, the interview in just a couple of minutes when he calls us up and we talk to him. And as a way of kind of getting ready for that, doing things just a little bit different here on DawgNation Daily today, one of the things that sort of strikes me from time to time is, we pretty well operate on the same format every single day for our program. We sort of begin our day by doing our broadcast. Those of you who watch on video may be aware that DawgNation Daily also airs as a podcast at Apple Podcast and various Android devices, SoundCloud. We post the show at the world-famous DawgNation.com. We're on the radio every day at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref. But for our podcast, or I should say for our video friends, when the official broadcast is done, we always take some comments at the end of the day. But the problem is that some of you get to watch the show at the beginning of the day, but you're not with us at the end of the day when I have a chance to actually interact. So some of you may not even be really aware that for about 20 minutes or, at least 10 minutes every day, sometimes it's as much as 20, we actually do some sort of like interaction where people tell me what they want to talk about. I sort of respond back to them. If all you ever do is on video see me sort of shouting into this camera, speaking into this microphone, or interacting with one of our DawgNation Daily guests, then you've never really gotten the full DawgNation Daily experience. So I thought, this is something I've been meaning to do for a while, but I thought with Roquan Smith coming up here in a couple of minutes, what a great way to sort of set the stage for Roquan being with us. What a better way to sort of flip the script on the typical format. We'll do some comments here early. We'll begin our official broadcast in just a little bit. By the way, on a Wednesday, that also means my partner from SEC Country Live, Mike Johnson, going to be on the show today. A lot of reaction to a lot of the stuff from the show the last couple of days. We'll kind of do, but I kind of want to do just a lot of that with you in the comment section. So while we get ready for a Roquan here coming up in a couple of minutes, and obviously talk a lot about our DawgNation appreciation, let me take a moment to talk to you and some of the folks that I don't get a chance to talk to nearly as much. By the way, I'm going to do this today on both Facebook Live, which I do every single day, but also say hello to our DawgNation YouTube viewers too. That's one of the things we've been doing a lot more on SEC Country Live in the afternoons, is interacting with the folks who watch the show on YouTube. And I'm appreciative of those who watch on YouTube and those who watch on Facebook Live. And so we're going to be getting ready to do that. Hard Times 57 also noticing here that Eddie, my buddy, has made it onto the set today. There have been a couple times lately that I have sort of forgotten Eddie, and I am embarrassed by that. But I say this all the time. This is true for the people who keep us on the air during the day. This is true for those of you who watch the show. You're gonna keep me honest, because you never know you never know what I might mess up on, what I might forget. You never know about that, so you got to kind of keep me up and running there. Randy Hall says great day today. We certainly appreciate you checking on Facebook and saying that. Somebody also mentioned in the comment section about getting Eddie a jersey. I do have some ideas for being able to do this. The problem is I haven't quite had time to do it yet. As you might imagine, I'm probably not the world's greatest what is a person who sews called? A sewer? I'm probably not the greatest sewer, maybe seam tailor, maybe that's the better word to use there. And I'm not sure I'm great at making stuffed animal clothing, but I do have an idea for how we can get Eddie dressed here pretty soon. Pretty soon we'll be able to do that. Robert J. Dibble, thank you for the kind words in the comment section. I appreciate that. It was Nick Lurch, by the way, who was saying we need to get Eddie a dog jersey. I do have some ideas for that, but it may take us a little while to do that. Santiago Diarn likes the idea of kind of changing things up a little bit. Yeah, the interactions that I get to have with the people who, watch the show every day is really my favorite part about the job. I like doing the official broadcast. There's a necessity for doing that. But there is something about like the sort of like freewheeling time when it's just y'all commenting, me responding back to your comments. It's a totally different kind of thing. And it makes sense. You really can't do that for the whole broadcast. You've obviously got some business you got to take care of. But in terms of when the opportunity allows, and as we get ready for Roquan Smith here in a couple of minutes, this is an opportunity to do that. I just think it's kind of a fun thing to be able to do. Matt Goodwin says, just looked at a mock draft with Chubb going 107th to the Jets. How does everyone feel about that? So 107th, that puts him in the, if I'm doing the math correct, 107th overall pick's a fourth rounder, I guess. Listen, I've obviously seen various projections for Nick Chubb, and maybe fourth sounds about right. I'm not a draft expert, so I can't necessarily tell you where these guys are going to be drafted. I agree with what one analyst I saw said, that he thought from a value proposition, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel compare very favorably to Saquon Barkley, who's thought to be the best overall player in the draft. My buddy Michael, who's one of our producers, he's a Giants fan. Maybe the Giants going to take Saquon Barkley in the up very near the top of the NFL draft this year. I mean, who would you rather have? A number one pick and a bunch of money, millions and millions of dollars, invest in Saquon Barkley, or the idea of Nick Chubb as a fourth rounder? I mean, I'm not telling you that Chubb's going to go on to have a multi-time Pro Bowl career, but I saw him overcome the odds at Georgia plenty, coming off injuries, coming off some doubters, coming back to Georgia, talking about the idea of unfinished business at the time when a lot of folks thought the definition for unfinished business was frankly pretty meager. Nick Chubb completely confounded those expectations, he and his fellow teammates in 2017. I think it's exciting to see what Georgia might be able to do in the future. I should say what Chubb's going to be able to do in the future. The way that he showed out at Georgia, also kind of doing some of that same kind of stuff at the NFL level. I think that's a very good question. George T. Powell says, I think Mark Fox is gone, but it's going to be hard to find a good, untainted coach who's going to stay at Georgia for a while. Yeah, we don't talk about basketball a ton here during the video portion of DawgNation Daily, but I agree with you, George. I think it's in all likelihood. I do think that Mark Fox's time as Georgia coach is about to come to an end. When the Georgia basketball season comes to an end there, I think Fox is going to come to an end too. As far as finding a better coach, I think that's a challenge. I think there's a lot of upheaval in college basketball right now, which makes the future of the entire sport uncertain. And this is probably not the best year to be looking for a basketball coach. The way that Ole Miss is right now, the way that Georgia's probably about to be, the way that other SEC programs may be. Also, who's to say how this shakes out? The uncertainty probably does make the coaching search a little more difficult. The one thing that I did say though on our DawgNation Daily Double today, and if you've never checked that out, we post the Daily Double over at the forum at forum.dawgnation.com. I also put a link to the Daily Double, or our team does anyway. We put a link to the Daily Double in our podcast post at the world-famous DawgNation.com. And for those people who want more basketball talk, want more attention paid to other aspects of UGA athletics, we kind of do that for our DawgNation Daily Double. And in that today, one of the points that I made about the Georgia basketball program is, even if we believe that Mark Fox is going to be gone, even if we're all convinced that Georgia would be better off with a different head coach, I do think this team deserves the opportunity to run through the SEC tournament however it can. For Yante Maton, who was the SEC Player of the Year, for the other guys on this roster, let's show them the respect I believe they deserve of focusing in on their game tonight. Let them beat Vanderbilt if they can, survive to advance another day if possible, and then at that point in time, there'll be plenty of time to talk about what the future of Georgia basketball is supposed to be. But for now, I'm sort of okay kind of postponing the Fox conversation to at least see what the Georgia basketball team's able to do on the floor tonight. Larry Young checking in from Oglethorpe County. Larry, appreciate you checking in there. Al Clement says, thanks for keeping Georgia football 12-month-a-year feature. Yeah, listen, it was one of the things when we first started DawgNation Daily that we really believed that there was an appetite for. Georgia football talk, 365 days a year, 52 weeks a year. It's the kind of thing that there are certainly ebbs and flows where the interest from the casual fan is going to be higher and excitement's going to build right around National Signing Day, right around G-Day, right around the start of the season. We know all of that. Certainly in December, making a run towards the college football playoff, we saw it, maybe peak at a level that it never had before. But just because you're in kind of an off-season position on the calendar doesn't mean that Georgia fans have stopped paying attention. It's one of the things that is great for me about doing DawgNation Daily. Amanda Bagwell checks in here. And by the way, if you're just joining us on DawgNation Daily, we're starting the format a little bit different today on our broadcast, but we will say hello to a former Georgia linebacker and Butkus Award winner Roquan Smith live on the program here coming up in just a couple of minutes. Amanda Bagwell says, there's no debate. Chubb deserves to be this is about the College Football Hall of Fame, that the NCAA has got a stupid rule that keeps him from qualifying for the Hall of Fame. So I have to admit, I have heard some talk about that, but I don't quite understand that. Why is Nick Chubb ineligible for the College Football Hall of Fame? I've heard people say this, but I'm not really sure what it is. The College Football Hall of Fame is sort of a weird animal in that there are a lot of people who should be in that aren't. There are a lot of people who have had to wait a long time to get in. Sometimes when you hear the class that is going in, you're scratching your head saying, wait, how is that guy only just now going into the College Football Hall of Fame? It's kind of a weird animal in that regard, but some of y'all may have to sort of shed into me a little more about exactly what's going on there with Nick Chubb and the College Football Hall of Fame eligibility. Mickey Brady says, come join us in Douglas and Pearson, Georgia. Sure appreciate you by keeping us informed about the Dogs every day. We're Gator haters down this way. Go Dogs. Mickey, that's music to my ears. I love the idea of being a Gator hater. And listen, we love the idea of getting around the state of Georgia. I know many of you have been hearing me say this for a while, and it's one of those things that, the moment we can kind of get our wits about us and sort of get that all planned up and get that ready to go, that is something we absolutely want to do. We're really excited about the possibility of doing all that. I think there's no reason why, our events, what we've done, can only be contained to Athens and Atlanta. I think in the future there's room to do a lot more of that kind of stuff. There's also room for more of your comments coming up. We'll do that throughout our video broadcast here today. But it's time to officially begin DawgNation Daily and get ready to say hello to former Georgia linebacker Roquan Smith. In fact, DawgNation Daily starts right now.
Presented by DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
And it is great to have you with us here today on DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. I have a bit of a special broadcast here today as we sort of start in kind of unusual fashion, a guest right off the bat here. And what better guest to bring in than the Butkus Award-winning linebacker, the guy that was helping lead the way for Georgia into a run of the college football playoff in 2017, a guy who also has a very bright NFL future, and a part of our DawgNation appreciation coming up on Thursday, March 15th at the Coca-Cola Roxy Theater there at the Battery Atlanta. DawgNation, help me in welcoming Roquan Smith here to DawgNation Daily here today. Roquan, thanks for your time. How are you today?
Yes, sir. Doing very well.
So let me start with this, if you don't mind. You're just coming off what was a very busy weekend, an important weekend in your life, getting ready for your NFL future. You were at the NFL Combine. How was that experience for you? How would you describe your time there?
It was an awesome experience for me. I really enjoyed it. The meetings, from the meetings aspect on the field, and just being able to see all my teammates there and just other great players from around the country. So I definitely really enjoyed it.
I will tell you, DawgNation, as you're listening to Roquan Smith here today on DawgNation Daily, if you're watching us on video, you want more information about DawgNation appreciation, including how you can get your tickets, simply type the word tickets into our comments section there on Facebook Live, and DawgNation will message you back with all you need to know about DawgNation appreciation, including how you can get your tickets to see Roquan Smith live on Thursday, March 15th with many of his Georgia teammates. And Roquan, we had Sony Michel here on DawgNation Daily a few days ago, and he was talking about then his approach to the Combine. The Combine obviously hadn't happened yet, and he said that for him, he approached this very much like it was a game, the same sort of mental approach, the same sort of like physical commitment. For you, did you take the same kind of approach? Did you sort of view the Combine like it was just another game, the way that you'd been playing on fall Saturdays for so much of the last few years?
I definitely did. From a certain aspect, I also viewed it as just a huge interview, and I knew that you would be, everyone would be looking at you from the time you get there until the time you leave. So I viewed it more so like interview and just, do your best in everything you do and don't take anything lightly. Treat everyone with respect. So that's how I viewed it.
Sounds like you tweaked your hamstring a little bit. Is that feeling okay right now?
Well, it was my calf. So my right calf had got a little tight on me. So, yeah, it's definitely feeling better. I'm getting treatment on it right now, and I should be fine.
Of course, those of us that pay attention to football this time of year pay attention to these mock drafts, and we see you, obviously in the first round in every one of these mock drafts, maybe a different spot depending on whose mock draft you're reading. You may be reading some of the same kind of stuff. You're certainly probably thinking about destinations you might sort of land. Is there something that you're looking for from the NFL team that drafts you, either a position fit, a scheme fit, a part of the country? Is there something that you're looking for from the NFL team that eventually selects you?
I'm just looking for an ideal fit for me, in a system that I feel like I can thrive, and just a place where I feel like I can grow on and off the field and, just make the most of my opportunities. So I'm more so looking at something like that.
Of course, you're going to be a part of our DawgNation appreciation coming up on Thursday, March 15th. And it's Roquan Smith, by the way, here on DawgNation Daily. And if you don't mind, I want to kind of transition back to what it will be that we'll be appreciating on Thursday, March 15th, your great career at the University of Georgia, including what you were able to do in 2017. And I'm hoping you can kind of take me through this from your mind a little bit. You were a good player in 2016. Then you kind of sat out spring practice last year. And then on the field, you took a gigantic leap forward to the point you were the Butkus Award winner and one of the top players at any position for the entire country. When did you know for yourself that this past season was going to be so special for you? When did you realize that, you know what, this is kind of all falling into place for me, and I'm really about to do something special here?
Well, I knew from when, like, Coach, so actually, right at the end of the 16 season, like the last 3 games, I was, like, really killing it. So I'm like, man, this year is going very well for me. So I'm looking at it from that aspect, and then just all the preparation I was doing in the springtime, just trying to attack all my weaknesses mentally because I couldn't quite do everything physically. So doing that, and I would say a lot of the game is mental. And once I was able to actually get back on the field and start the physical stuff and having that mental approach that I had, it had me just far more advanced. So, and then my studying and my preparation work, I think that really separated me, along with, had some great teammates that, they had to account for as well, so couldn't really, account for me and try to, set me up all the time.
You talk about those teammates. How much fun was it playing with those guys this year? I mean, I'm obviously a media guy. I'm seeing, some of the interviews y'all are doing. I'm participating in some of those. I'm seeing a lot of this from the outside. But, the closer you kind of got to the situation, it seemed like y'all kind of had a little bit of a special bond on both sides of the ball, really. Not just your defensive guys, but offense, defense, kind of everything together. I mean, would you describe it that way? What kind of bond did you have with your Georgia teammates throughout this run in 2017?
I would say it was a very close one, man. We, a lot of coach. I thank Coach a lot for, everything he did for us, the bonding things we did as a team and made it more of like a brotherhood. And, I felt like that really stood out and separated us from, the years past. And it really made, we care for one another. And we wasn't really more so worried about self. We was worried about the other guy. When you're feeling like that about guys, man, it's hard to beat you when you're willing to give up your right leg for the guy next to you, and he's willing to do the same thing, and that's a dangerous group for sure.
It was certainly a special year for Georgia. Trip to Notre Dame for the first time ever for the program in terms of going to South Bend, clobbering rivals like Tennessee and Florida, SEC championship against Auburn, then obviously the Rose Bowl, which is the top game of the season, I think, from almost anybody's perspective. Is there a moment, though, from the season that sort of stands out to you when you think about your own memories for your final year at Georgia? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Just the run we had, and just the brotherhood, how it was. It was just really special, and it was just like I can't even really put it into words, how special the bond was, and that's what I really, really enjoyed, and it was something that I'll definitely miss because I don't think it can get any better than that, at any other place. So I'm definitely, grateful that I was able to be a part of it, of something that special.
I know you've been asked some version of this question a million times, but we all remember back on National Signing Day when you initially held up the gloves showing UCLA. You were going to go out and play at Westwood there for the Bruins. Then we know how it unfolds. You end up at Georgia. How much do you allow yourself to think about how it could have all been very different? Your career could have unfolded in a different way. The experiences you had this season could have not have happened. You could have still gone on to an outstanding career, but the memories from 2017 wouldn't be there if you had actually chosen UCLA over Georgia. Do you think much about that, about how different it all could have been?
Well, I definitely think about it when other people brings it up and whatnot, but just thinking about it, it's crazy, and I just feel God makes no mistakes, and it's really crazy as I think about it now. I'm like, wow, I could have been all the way across country like that, but after my experience here at the university and everything I've accomplished here and all the people I've met and networking and everything like that, I can't really envision myself being anywhere else, and then the brotherhood, I can't really picture this being anywhere else. So, it's just really special. I'm just grateful that I was able to attend an awesome institution in the University of Georgia.
I want to close out our interview in just a moment by asking you a question about the Georgia team you leave behind and kind of what's left on that Georgia defense. Before that, though, obviously DawgNation Appreciation comes up on Thursday, March 15th. We're all incredibly excited about it. People I've heard from are incredibly excited about having you there that night at the Coca-Cola Roxy Theater there at the Battery Atlanta. For you personally, what does this mean for you to be in the room and have a chance to hear from a lot of Georgia fans, see a lot of Georgia fans who obviously, were thrilled by the run to the playoff this season? What does DawgNation Appreciation mean to you personally?
It's going to mean a lot. Just, seeing all the great fans, the best fans in the nation come out and support me and my other teammates and whatnot is going to be very huge. And like all the fans showing up, you know, to all the games this year, even the spring game, you know, packing it out and just showing you how, you know, relentless they are and how excited they are for us and everything that we did. And, you know, the least we could do was give them a good season than last season, even though we did come up a little short. But it'll be awesome being able to see everyone. And I'm very excited, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right, before we let you go, Roquan, we got to take care of a little business because obviously Georgia fans love what you did in a Georgia uniform this season. They were impressed by your exploits there at linebacker, and there's this thought now of, okay, who's the next Roquan going to be? We enjoyed Roquan Smith in 2017, but we need a new Roquan for 2018. For those linebackers who are still in Athens trying to be the, quote, next Roquan, what advice would you give them about, you know, how to actually fulfill in a Georgia uniform what you were able to do? Any advice that you would offer to them?
All I would say, every guy's different, but the only thing I would say is just try your best in everything that you do. Don't take anything for granted, and, you know, take advantage of every opportunity because not the next one is never promised, and you never know what's in store for you. So just always make the best of everything. Don't take anything lightly. Learn everything you can while you can.
Is there a linebacker or two that you have your eye on saying, you know what, that young man may follow my footsteps there a little bit? Is there someone that comes to mind in a conversation like that?
Well, there's a lot of special guys back there right now. I'm looking for a lot of competition to be going on this upcoming spring because all those guys have some great skill sets from Nate Trez. He's one of the leaders of the linebacker room. Then you have a guy like Tate Crowder, Monty Rice, then, you know, Jaden McBride. So it's a lot of guys there, man, that has a chance to definitely make some plays this upcoming year. So I'm definitely thinking it'll be a rotation or anything like that because all those guys have some special skill sets.
Well, Roquan, let me say this on behalf of DawgNation. What you put forth in the Georgia uniform in the last 3 years was truly special. It was exciting to watch. We're thrilled to have you as a part of DawgNation Appreciation on Thursday, March 15th. Thank you so much for being here on DawgNation Daily today. Best of luck with the rest of your NFL draft preparations, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for having me.
Really good stuff there from Georgia linebacker Roquan Smith, who put together an awesome career at UGA. And, man, what a great addition he is to our lineup for DawgNation Appreciation Thursday, March 15th. By the way, if you are saying, okay, how do I get there? How do I become a part of DawgNation Appreciation? If you're watching us on video, the good news is in our comment section, simply type the word tickets. Just type the word tickets in the comment section. DawgNation will message you back. You can find out more about DawgNation Appreciation on Thursday, March 15th. Of course, Roquan Smith on the show today, as you see there on your screen as well. If you're watching us on video, Davin Bellamy added that lineup. It keeps getting bigger. It keeps getting better. DawgNation Appreciation going to be a lot of fun. If you're listening on the radio or watching us on or listening on the podcast, you can also DawgNation.com and get more of your tickets. In fact, here on DawgNation Daily, let's go ahead and get ready to roll on with the rest of the show right now and say thanks for being with us. If you're watching us on video or if you're listening to us in the podcast, radio, you know by now we try to make DawgNation Daily as easy for you to find as we possibly can, and we are glad that you're with us here on the program today, and certainly hope that you are a part of our DawgNation Appreciation. Go ahead and get your tickets if you have not already. Type the word tickets into the comment section of the video right now, or go to DawgNation.com for more on that. And for those of you who said, you know what, I just heard Roquan Smith, and it just makes me even more disappointed that I wasn't able to get in while DawgNation Appreciation VIP tickets were still on sale. As you know, those sold out, so fast. Well, if you weren't able to get those, our friends from Marlowe's have a great giveaway that they're doing. Simply text the word Marlowe's right now. That's without an apostrophe, Marlowe's, M-A-R-L-O-W-S. Text Marlowe's to 24242 now all the way through March 13th for your chance to win 2 VIP tickets to DawgNation Appreciation. Now, when you text, you're going to get a link back from the friends at Marlowe's that is your registration for your chance to win. We're going to draw the winner at noon on March the 14th. It's a pair of VIP tickets, courtesy of our friends at Marlowe's for DawgNation Appreciation. Cannot wait to give those away. I think it's really, really cool that Marlowe's is doing that. By the way, also let me thank Online Trading Academy here, who that night at DawgNation Appreciation, Thursday, March 15th, going to announce the winner of a pair of tickets for all the home games coming up in Athens this fall. Online Trading Academy giving that away. We'll announce the winner at DawgNation Appreciation. Another reason why this event's going to be huge. Now, here on DawgNation Daily on a Wednesday, coming up in a couple of minutes, we'll get ready to say hello to Mike Johnson like we do every single day or every single Wednesday at this time. One of the things that we'll get into with Mike, and I want to spend a minute or two on this before Mike kind of gets in here. Really interesting, the reaction from yesterday's show where we talked about, hey, what's the future of the Georgia schedule supposed to be? And I sort of made the case that I'm not quite so sure it's an imperative, it's a have to, that Georgia plays Georgia Tech anymore. I think it's the kind of thing that ought to be looked at in the future. Now, I'm not talking about next year because these things are done many years in advance. But when you start thinking about what the future of Georgia's scheduling supposed to be, I'm not so sure it's a requirement for Georgia to play Georgia Tech. Now, obviously, some Tech fans heard about that. They didn't seem to like that too much. But the truth is, I don't care at all, what somebody that's not a Georgia fan thinks about a subject like this. This show is for Georgia fans. It's a daily podcast for Georgia fans. We say that for a reason. I will say that I thought reaction from Georgia fans, though, was pretty interesting. I'd sort of braced myself for some UGA fans to disagree, maybe a lot of UGA fans to disagree, for a lot of UGA fans to make the case that tradition's supposed to be the kind of thing that you hold on to here. But it was kind of interesting that the overwhelming majority of Georgia fans kind of agreed with my point, that if you could replace Tech with a home-and-home with a major power like a Notre Dame more often, or more neutral site games like the one that Georgia played against North Carolina in 2016, or even better opponents than that, that might be the better way for Georgia to go in the future. I'm not telling you that every Georgia fan felt that way that I heard from, but the majority did. I think it speaks to a change taking place with Georgia fans right now, maybe all of college football fans. Scheduling the way things have worked in the past may not work for the next generation of fans quite as much, and Georgia Tech and the changing opinion about that rivalry may be an example of that. You continue to weigh in at DawgNation Daily with me on Twitter in our comment section. We'll keep talking about it. It's great to have you with us here today on DawgNation Daily, and hope you enjoy Mike Johnson right now. And I will say hello to my good friend and my partner on SEC Country Live each and every afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the SEC Country Facebook page. While I do that, let me also remind you, we had a Roquan Smith on the show earlier. Really fun with him. You're watching us on video. Text the word tickets into the comment section there on Facebook Live. You can get a message back from DawgNation with your chance to get your tickets for DawgNation Appreciation coming up Thursday, March 15th. But Mike, with that out of the way, let me say good morning to you. Welcome to the program. How are you doing?
I'm catching a little lunch at the turn out here on the golf course. It's beautiful out here in Atlanta.
Mike, how about that? What a gentleman and a scholar you are. Are you telling me that you are taking a break from the golf course to join us here on the program today?
Listen, BA, DawgNation and business calls. I have to get a little relaxation before I have to come hang out with you this afternoon. so the golf course calls for a little bit, but I'll be back to business as usual this afternoon, obviously.
I'm just thankful that you spent some time with us on the program, given the fact that you got the club in your hand there. But we'll try to make good use of your time then. Let me actually piggyback with you off something I was just talking about and something I spent a good bit of the show talking about yesterday. That's the idea that I put forth that, if you're going to think about the next generation of college football scheduling, for Georgia here in particular, Mike, I don't know that it's a have-to for Georgia to play Georgia Tech anymore. I'm talking about years into the future. I think, Mike, having been in South Bend, Indiana this past September, I think Georgia fans really like to taste of a fun road trip. Spend a weekend in Chicago, travel over to South Bend on the day of the game, play a name-brand opponent like Notre Dame. That was fun for Georgia fans. I think Georgia fans look at Alabama, who played Florida State last season. They look at Auburn, who's going to play Washington, a top 10 team to start this season. They say, you know what, more of those neutral site games, that's kind of fun too. If you want to do more of that, you may have to do less of Georgia Tech, and for me, that's a trade I'm willing to make. You're not a Georgia fan, but you understand college football rivalries. What's your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough. I see where you're coming from in terms of, the rivalry might not have the war that it once did. Obviously, Georgia seems to be, pulling away from some of the people they play on a yearly basis right now. But, I look at it in overall grand scheme of things. It's a rivalry that goes back a long time. It's a rivalry that still means a lot to a lot of people in the state. Brian, I say do both. I mean, you were able to play Notre Dame and Georgia Tech last year. Even with the Notre Dame game, there's still people screaming, Alabama's the same way. There's a bunch of teams the same way throughout the SEC where, you're scrambling to, schedule opponents that have better track records, that are more prominent in terms of national college football. So, I think taking away an ACC opponent that you play every year is not really what I would think would be in the best interest. But I understand where the angle comes from. I think that, as you move towards the future, you look at Auburn playing Washington, you look at LSU playing Miami, you look at Tennessee playing West Virginia. Those are sexy matchups on the college football landscape. Those are matchups that you get at the end of the year and the college football playoff committee looks at and says, boy, look who they face. Look how tough their schedule was. So I think you can do a little bit of both. I think you can keep Georgia Tech in the schedule and still play some of those non-conference games that end up being big matchups.
It's just going to be up to, obviously, the administration of Georgia to try to find a way to do that.
Let me do a quick follow-up on what you said there. If you're going to put forth an idea where nobody plays Austin Peay anymore, Georgia does that this year. Alabama played Mercer last season. They'll play, someone like that this year. If you want to put forth an idea where no one plays any of those kind of games, I'd be in favor of that. I think my entire audience would be in favor of that. I think, though, what's probably more realistic as a first step is to say, since Georgia's not going to outpace the rest of the SEC in terms of limiting those games, does it make sense for Georgia to keep sort of paying attention to the tradition of end-of-season game against Georgia Tech and sort of seeding Mercedes-Benz Stadium to Alabama and Auburn to start seasons? That's a pretty good commercial for those programs in Atlanta every single year, to miss out on road trips to places like Notre Dame because Georgia also has the neutral site every year against Florida, or to miss out on playing a regional rival like Clemson that might, when I was a kid, Georgia and Clemson played every single year, sort of foregoing the opportunity to do that because you, quote, have to play Georgia Tech. I think in the modern day of college football, with Texas no longer playing Texas A&M, Missouri no longer playing Kansas, I think the list of things you, quote, have to do in college football is smaller than it's ever been.
Yeah, I agree, but I just think that on the landscape of college football and with the college football playoff committee making selections each year, it's not a BCS formula anymore. It's not, it's not a poll. It's a committee making selections. And so I look at it and say, I think they can afford that. I think, with a loss to, a couple of out-of-conference opponents, if you have a schedule where you schedule, a neutral site opener against somebody in the Georgia Dome, and then you play Clemson and you play Georgia Tech, obviously that's not going to happen anytime soon. So I think when you look 10 and 15 years down the road, there's so many people clamoring for some of these cupcake opponents to be taken off the schedule that I would hate to see Georgia work in reverse before that trend starts happening. I'd hate to see them take away the Georgia Tech rivalry, then get a couple years down the road and say, boy, we really need to schedule an ACC opponent, and that kind of thing come back. So, like I said, I understand the dynamic of it, but also on the national landscape, I see the way schedules are starting to go, and people are starting to love more and more these huge neutral site non-conference games. We've seen more and more of them this year. We're going to see more and more of them next year, and I don't think it's going to be something that changes anytime soon.
Of course, the genesis of this entire conversation is the ESPN writer who called the Georgia non-conference schedule atrocious. What's your reaction to that?
Well, listen, I think that you can look at scheduling. It's so important at the non-conference games. Obviously, Austin Peay and some of the other games we're going to go through. There's not a Notre Dame on the schedule for them this year. I understand that. But the fact of the matter is, some of the teams that Georgia's going to play, you look at Auburn, you look at LSU, that's a heck of a divisional crossover type schedule. You're going to still have the good teams from the East. And so, I think for me, and I get this pulling the players out, outlook, just win the games you can win. Win the games that are on your schedule, and at the end of the year, you're going to be where you want to be. I don't think you can worry about what non-conference is scheduled here and when we're scheduling a home and home and when we're scheduling a neutral site. Obviously, you can think about that years in advance, but, now that the 2018 season is here, go forward with what you have. I understand her angle, but, to me, Georgia is the kind of team that has the brand recognition to where if they win almost all of their games, they're going to be in the right spot at the end of the year because you're going to have to include the SEC championship game, and it's going to be against a very quality opponent as well.
We had kind of a fun moment a couple minutes ago here on DawgNation Daily. We talk a lot on our program, Mike, about who the next Roquan Smith might be for Georgia, who fills his shoes in terms of being a defensive star for the Bulldogs. Well, we had actually a chance to ask Roquan Smith his thoughts on the next Roquan from that Georgia linebacking core. And I guess, Mike, my question to you would be is, for the guys who are linebackers left over at Georgia, either an incoming freshman like a Channing Tindall or guys on the roster like a Monty Rice or maybe even a Natrez Patrick, assuming he returns, how tough of a label is that to try to wear? Butkus Award winner in 1 year, who's going to sort of step up and kind of fill that void? How tough is it for guys trying to vie to be that next Roquan Smith?
Well, it's tough. I think it's tough like that with any position group on the field. When you talk about linebacker core and secondary, but to me, that middle linebacker, that Roquan Smith is the alpha dog of this Nick Saban, Kirby Smart style of defense. They have to be loud. They have to be audible. They have to be very smart. They have to be a leader, and I think that's tough to just replace. You can't just look at a guy and say, boy, that guy's going to go out there and be a leader. I think he has to find it himself. I think he has to find the ability to be vocal around his teammates. That's why spring football is huge. That's why summer football is huge. You can't be with the coaches during summer. It's got to be guys like Roquan Smith that are calling together these defensive meetings. They're calling together these 7-on-7s. And so I think whichever guy can get with a Jake Fromm or DeAndre Swift on the offensive side of the ball and start matching things up, getting time scheduled, getting workout scheduled for the summer, that's the guy you're going to see start to emerge. It's a tough job. When I left, it was Rolando McClain leaving with me, and then Dante Hightower stepped in that role at Alabama. And that's an uphill battle. Anytime you're replacing a Butkus Award winner who's got, 100-plus tackles, it's going to be an uphill battle. But I have no doubt in my mind that Kirby Smart knows how to get it done, and I think they have the guys on the roster that can fill in those spots as well.
So talk to me about this for a minute. Georgia's going to begin spring practice on March 20th. That's later than some. It's kind of in line with some other SEC teams. But, this has been, for all college football, kind of this intense weight room work, conditioning work here over the last few weeks. That's obviously part of the hallmark of the Alabama success that you were a part of, the kind of work you put in this time of year. So here we are, beginning of March. You're still a couple weeks away from practice. You're probably sick and tired of the weight and conditioning work you've been doing. What's the mindset of the player right now? Is he excited about practice and just maybe a little bit of a change up from what he's been doing? Is he dreading that because he knows that's going to be hard too? For instance, I know NFL players don't like their training camp during the summer, but how do college players for the most part feel about spring practice that either has started for some SEC teams or about to begin for programs like Georgia?
Yeah, listen, spring practice, by the time it rolls around, it's such a welcome sight because these guys are going through, the mat drills, the fourth quarter, they call it at Georgia right now. That's such a tough thing. You really, for most of February and some of January and probably a little bit of March for those programs, it's survival mode. There's 6 a.m. workouts. There's, literally when you go in the indoor facility and they lock the doors and you have to go through that time, that's really where you kind of realign yourself. That's where you reset your body. That's where you learn some agility. That's where you try to pick up some speed before spring football starts. And then all of a sudden you can get back to football technique. So there's a little bit of survival mode. Some of the leaders and some of the guys that have been around are looking at the young guys saying, hey, you got to get through this. It's a mental hurdle. But when spring practice starts, boy, it's a welcome sight. It's like, thank goodness, we're actually getting to play the game we love, and we don't have to go through any more of that tough conditioning. So, I have no doubt that, when March 20th gets here and those guys are able to hit the field, they're going to be in a really good mood because they know what the alternative is from what they've just been through.
I'll let you get back to the golf course here in a moment. I appreciate you being a part of our show today on DawgNation Daily. Let me get one more thought from you before we do. I was watching some of this combine stuff over the weekend. I saw Daron Payne, the former Alabama defensive tackle. What do you run, a 4.91 in the 40-yard dash for a very big guy who at times was unblockable? A couple thoughts here real quick. I think you would agree with me that when you think about the Alabama success and what has sort of set it apart from most of the rest of college football, it's guys like Daron Payne. It's Roquan Davis who's still on the roster, but it's those freakishly good, big, quick, athletic defensive tackles. That really is, if you had to sort of like draw the Alabama mascot, more so than the elephant, it may be a big defensive tackle, right? Nothing says Nick Saban's success more than guys like Daron Payne, who just ran the 4.91 40, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. And in my day, Marcel Darius is a guy who comes to mind. Obviously, there's been a bunch of Jonathan Allen fits in that mold from last year, and just going back, it seems like one after the other, and these guys just kind of keep rolling in and out. And obviously, it's kind of changed on defense here. Where when I was living college football, there was still a lot of pro style. It was more about who could anchor. But now you see guys like Daron Payne that have that explosion in their hips, that really run these high speeds and kind of get up the field and kind of penetrate and wreak havoc in the backfield on some of these spread offenses. So you're right, I think I've seen some guys like that in Georgia uniforms as well, where really you can kind of see them transitioning into this Kirby Smart style of defense where explosion, hip speed, ability to really roll your hips and stand up that offensive lineman in front of you. That's what that 40 times says to me from Daron Payne. And so, I think moving forward, that to me is the key to the SEC, being able to win with those big guys. You don't find guys like that very much in the Big 12 and the Pac-12. Those guys, those are SEC-style players. That's what separates the SEC in my mind.
Mike, you were good enough to join us from the golf course today. I guess curiosity is going to force me to ask, what kind of shape is your golf game in this time of year?
It is not good, man. Let me tell you that right now. I've been chasing it around quite a bit today. It's cart path only, boy, so I'm getting a good size workout out here on the course.
It's those fancy courses the former NFL player plays at. Just trust me, most of our audience is not playing cart path only golf. I'm surprised you don't have the caddy walking behind you there giving you your club, and I'm surprised you don't have that going on.
Listen, there ain't nobody else out here today, B.A. It's about probably 35 or 40 degrees, and people look at me like that was crazy when I showed up. But I'm getting a few holes in and hopefully starting to sharpen the game up.
All right, Mike, thanks for your time. I'll see you this afternoon for SEC Country Live on the SEC Country Facebook page.
All right, B.A.
So good stuff there from Mike Johnson, and it really brings to mind a couple of things. Let me talk about the Daron Payne stuff here for a moment. The reason why I ask him that is because there's obviously a correlation to Georgia here, and Mike's right. The problem with defensive tackle is, and the reason why national championship teams almost always have good ones, not just Alabama, but Clemson, Ohio State, the recent national champions in college football, the reason why, they are what they are is because they have very good defensive tackles. That's one of the things that Brent Venables has done at Clemson, established that defensive line. Alabama has it. Roquan Davis, I think he may be in the conversation for top player in the SEC this season. Certainly one of the 3 or 4 best guys in the league, I would think. It's what the really good teams have. And when you look at Georgia's recruiting efforts, I mean, I think it speaks volumes, but the importance of this position that in 2018, Georgia got told no by virtually no one on the recruiting trail. But did Georgia knock it out of the park when it comes to defensive tackle recruiting? I think most fans would say no. No disrespect to a Jordan Davis, no disrespect to Tramel Walthour, but in terms of bringing in the kind of guys that Georgia brought in other positions, Georgia probably didn't quite do that at the defensive tackle position. What was the difference? It wasn't that Georgia got told no by those defensive tackles, although I guess Robert Cooper, chose Florida State over UGA. But it wasn't that Georgia got told no. It's that Georgia They just weren't defensive tackles. There were only like 20 4-star defensive tackles for the entire 2018 recruiting class nationwide. I don't believe there was a single 5-star. Am I right about that? No 5-star defensive tackles for 2018. You know, there's just not a lot in some years. Last year was an example of that. It's why in 2019 that's such a position of need for recruiting for Georgia. Georgia wants the freakishly fast, big defensive tackles, the kind of game wrecker players like what Deron Payne and Roquan Davis were for Alabama back in 2017. It's one of the attentions that's going to be paid to a guy like Travon Walker is going to be so high. Jeff Sintel on DawgNation Daily yesterday. We both, I think, agree here that if you had to circle one player, I guess from the uncommitted crop anyway, who is the number one priority for Georgia, it's probably Travon Walker. And the reason why, because defensive tackle is that important. It is the scarcest position of all, maybe even more so than quarterback. And national champions always have good ones. The national titles where Georgia wants to go, and good defensive tackles is probably the path for how it gets there. There's more DawgNation Daily coming up.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
All right, time now for our SEC Through. And of course, you can check out SEC Country Live with Mike Johnson this afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, on the SEC Country Facebook page. That show's been really fun. You know, somebody in the comment section on video a little earlier mentioned the fact that he loves that we're doing football content 12 months a year. And listen, that's the foundation upon which DawgNation Daily is built, and I feel the same way about SEC Country Live. There is plenty to talk about when it comes to college football 52 weeks out of the year. So if you get tired of the other stuff, we're always here doing the same thing every day. SEC football, Georgia football, that's what we do on our shows. We don't sort of fall into the same trap of kind of, fixating on the NBA or anything like that. We take care of what folks care about, which is obviously the SEC and Georgia in particular for this audience. We're thankful that you participate in our shows each and every day. By the way, hope to see you on Friday, March 23rd as a part of the International Auto Show. You don't miss the Atlanta International Auto Show. It's a great place to shop, compare hundreds of new cars, trucks, SUVs from over 25 major manufacturers. You're also going to see debuting models for 2019, the latest in alternative fuel vehicles, and some great special attractions. I was hearing some about that this morning before the show starts, like some Star Wars vehicles, some things like that. Some comic book characters going to be on hand, including Black Panther, I understand. A lot going to be going on there at the Atlanta International Auto Show. It's just once a year, and it comes up for 5 days, March 21st through the 25th. As I said, I'm going to be on hand from 1 to 3 p.m. on Friday, March 23rd. Love to have you come by and see me at the DawgNation booth. It's going to be at the Georgia World Congress Center at Northside Drive. You can go to GoAutoShow.com for more information. Of course, let me also remind you, for those who are watching us on video right now, we've been talking a lot about our DawgNation appreciation. If you want more info about how you can get tickets to that, simply put the word tickets into our comment section there on Facebook Live. For the YouTube folks, you may have to go to Facebook to get this done. Go over to the Facebook page, type in the word tickets, and DawgNation is going to send you back a message with your access to that. All right. SEC stories here for SEC Through time. Urban Meyer is in, I guess, Florida for an event for whatever reason. The folks from the Jacksonville.com catch up with him. They ask him about his thoughts about his former offensive coordinator, Dan Mullen, who's now the head coach at Florida. Meyer's obviously praising Mullen, as you might imagine. Coaches say nice things about other coaches, especially these two guys who work together. He thinks the entire SEC's, I think the phrase that Meyer used was, they're going to feel Dan Mullen at Florida. Maybe that's the case. Maybe Mullen does do that. I guess I'm sort of curious, though, about how Florida fans react to Urban Meyer talking about Florida at all. I mean, Do Florida fans want to hear from Meyer on anything when it comes to this kind of stuff right now? He obviously sort of left them in kind of inglorious fashion after the 2010 season. Maybe Florida fans might rather Urban Meyer just not have their name on his mouth at all, on his lips in any form or fashion. I don't know about that, but Urban Meyer apparently excited about the future of Dan Mullen there in Gainesville. Speaking of Florida, I also thought it was kind of interesting that there was a piece at SECCountry.com. Zach Alberti, I believe, was the writer. A lot of the Florida assistant coaches talking about how they were going to view recruiting as the path to better offense. You may remember both on DawgNation Daily and on SEC Country Live yesterday, we talked about the pressure that might be on Dan Mullen here just a bit to be better on offense for Florida this season, given the fact that it was never really that great under Jim McElwain, despite the fact that he was an offensive-minded guy before he came to Florida. And obviously, Will Muschamp had some very high-profile struggles when it comes to offense. Dan Mullen thought to be the offensive guy here. He's got some pressure to do that. And Florida, kind of putting it out there that recruiting's the path that we're going to get to make this happen. I think Florida's probably saying that for two reasons. One's bad for Gators fans. One might be good, though. I think this is partially an attempt on Florida to sort of punt into the future on improved offense, maybe not raise the expectations too much for 2018, because I think that Florida rightly looks at its roster and says, you know what, this is kind of a mess. By the standard of what typically wins SEC championships, Gators right now probably far from that. This may be their way of kind of, dampening expectations. But also, if you're a Florida fan, admittedly, it's probably nice to hear Florida even talking about recruiting again after Jim McElwain's high-profile failures in that regard. Speaking of recruiting, I thought that there was an interesting Q&A also at SECCountry.com on the LSU page with former four-star wide receiver, now LSU signee Jamar Chase, who you may remember at one point in time was going to go on the NFL Network and was slated to commit live to TCU. He was going to play with Justin Rogers, a pretty good quarterback who signed with the Horned Frogs. The TV announcement got botched. They ran out of time and had to postpone it. And when the announcement got postponed, Jamar Chase started rethinking things and eventually landed at LSU. It's a weird recruitment. A good story at SECCountry.com about that. And how about Vanderbilt, by the way, picking up a late addition to its 2018 class? Four-star linebacker Salua Messina signs with Vanderbilt. He's from out of Utah. One of the top, linebackers, really. He's a four-star guy, pretty solid prospect. Vanderbilt is not the worst team in the SEC for 2018. I think that distinction belongs to Arkansas. And recruiting wins like this for Derek Mason, an example of how they've sort of climbed their way out of the cellar. Kind of an interesting story at Vanderbilt. Not a threat in the East, but better than the worst, which is an improvement for the Commodores. We'll make that your SEC through. And as we wrap up here today, a couple reminders. We've talked about rivalries over the last couple of days here on DawgNation Daily. My thoughts on the Georgia Tech rivalry. Some will agree, some will disagree. That's okay. The one point I'm going to continue to be an evangelist on, though, the one point I'm going to continue to push here on DawgNation Daily is no matter how you feel about Georgia Tech, Georgia's number one rivalry is and is supposed to be the Florida Gators. We say that every single day, that a good Georgia fan is a Gator hater first and foremost. That's why we do the Gator Hater Countdown, because 234 days from right now, Georgia goes back to Jacksonville. It beats Florida again. And ain't that fun when it comes to the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Also, for more on Georgia's basketball game today against Vanderbilt to start the SEC tournament and the future of Mark Fox, check out our DawgNation Daily Double. We'll post it as a link. We put the show up at DawgNation.com and on the forum at forum.DawgNation.com. And go to DawgNation.com to get your tickets for DawgNation Appreciation. We'll see you tomorrow. All right, we did some comments early in the show today. For those of you just joining us, that was really fun. But we still have some time for some more right now. And by the way, how much did you enjoy hearing Roquan Smith today on DawgNation Daily? That was a blast. But it's great to have you with us here today, too. Let's run through a lot of these comments. Alan Verbanchik says Georgia needs defensive tackles big time. I think that's 100% true. We talked about that at the end of our interview with Mike Johnson. By the way, that's a little bonus content that you'll get on video that our podcast friends won't get. But yeah, I thought Mike's point on that was a really good one. I thought that the response that Alan's giving here is exactly in line with my own point of view. That you want to really measure one of the things that elite college football playoff teams do that non-elite teams don't, and that's a lot of that's going to be centered there around the defensive tackle position. Yarnell Culler, good. He makes a good comment. Let me address this. He says, some of y'all are acting like we beat Georgia Tech 30 straight times. Y'all tripping. That's what he says when it comes to Georgia Tech rivalry. Here's my point on that, though, Yarnell, and I want to be very clear about this. My issue with saying that maybe Georgia should no longer play Georgia Tech has got nothing to do with the fact that Georgia's going to beat Georgia Tech 30 straight years. You can go back and look at the last 30 years. Georgia has not. Georgia lost to Georgia Tech as recently as 2 years ago. Georgia lost before that, what was it, 2014 and then 2008 as well. I mean, Tech's got some victories over Georgia. This is not to say that hasn't happened, nor is it to say that Tech would never beat Georgia again. I mean, sometime in the future, that's sort of bound to happen. Tech's not the worst team in the country. My point here, though, is that there are other opportunities for Georgia that are just better. This is not about Tech being terrible, the worst team ever. This is not, me trying to sort of rub dirt in Tech's face here. I just was with tens upon tens of thousands of Georgia fans at Notre Dame, and you know what? I think they like that experience better than playing Tech at the end of every season. I think when Georgia fans look in this year and see, Auburn playing Washington, which is going to be a preseason top 10 team, Alabama last year playing Florida State, which is a battle of two top 5 teams, or at least preseason top 5 teams. I think there's a thought about Georgia fans who say, you know what, that's the kind of game I want more of, and I don't want to give Mercedes-Benz Stadium and that coveted real estate, national television to start a season. I don't want to cede that to my SEC rivals here because they're going to use that as sort of a recruiting commercial. That's an opportunity for Georgia better than Georgia Tech. So trading the end-of-season FBS game for an FBS game near the beginning of the season against a Clemson, a regional rival that probably gets more done for Georgia than Georgia Tech does, or a road trip to a place like South Bend every now and then, or a big neutral site game against a Florida State or a Washington when it's a top 10 team, or a USC, which has been done before. I think that's just a better deal for Georgia. I think that benefits Georgia more. Georgia's unique in this regard, given the fact that it's already got a pre-scheduled neutral site game every single season. That makes home scheduling a little tough when you every other year go to an FBS team and have a neutral site game kind of taken away from you. Georgia doesn't want to play 5 home games in a year. Not only is that bad for the administration, who you may not care about, they've got plenty of money, but the local Athens businesses don't. I don't want to stick restaurants and bars and apparel shops. I don't want to stick them with one fewer home game every now and then. 5 home dates a year. That's people's livelihoods you start messing with at that point in time. Athens has got to get its home games, and Georgia fans want better games. Maybe flexibility gained by trading FBS Tech at the end of the season for something else. And if the majority of fans don't agree with me, I'm sort of okay with that too. I just think this is an appropriate issue to be raised. J.C. Howell, going back to what I said about Vanderbilt a moment ago, they're owning Tennessee right now, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, they kind of have. Vanderbilt's not terrible. They're not good, but they're not terrible. Arkansas is the worst team in the SEC. Vanderbilt is not as bad as them. J.C. Howell, by the way, wants to keep Georgia Tech on the schedule. We're going to hear from Georgia fans who feel that way. Darian Ford says, "Stop sleeping on Vanderbilt." I don't think I am. I'm talking them up. Eric Moody gives us the blind squirrel emojis. I always enjoy that. Yeah, Darian Ford. I don't think I'm sleeping on Vanderbilt. I'm kind of talking them up. Randy Hall says Georgia needs 5 commits on G-Day. Boy, that'd be a fun week of broadcast coming up after that. Chad Williams says Mike was making too much sense today. Did he really go to Alabama? Yeah, listen, how much better would the world be if other Alabama grads were as easy to get along with as Mike Johnson is? Don't let him hear that I said that. But the world would be a much better place if the sort of average Alabama alumnus was as easy to sort of talk to and get along with as Mike is. Brian Wright wondering about Nate McBride. I think that McBride, we're going to find out a lot about him. He's obviously a very popular player in this Georgia roster. He's a little bit like the sort of defensive version of Elijah Holyfield. We get a bunch of questions about Holyfield on offense in terms of having a bigger role. McBride sort of occupies that spot on defense, and he's going to get his chance this year. But I would caution Georgia fans to, not ask for too much too soon for him. I mean, remember, even for Roquan Smith, the development kind of happens slowly. I love Smith's description, by the way, earlier on today's show about kind of, at the end of his 2016 season, he's like, you know what? This is kind of all falling into place for me. And boy, what a good feeling that must be when you realize it's about to happen. Diedrich Frazier says the Tech game would be more special if they had some good seasons, but they're just not good most years. The other thing I'll say, Diedrich, is the game would be more special if they would just sort of talk up the rivalry. I mean, I played the audio of Paul Johnson yesterday, essentially sidestepping the whole idea. If it's going to be a rivalry, if it's going to be clean, old-fashioned hate, I think the underdog perennially in the rivalry has got a responsibility to make it so. And I don't think Tech's doing its part in that regard. Connor Reddick putting the word tickets into our comment section there. If you want to get more information on your DawgNation appreciation tickets, you can do that. Connor, we appreciate you wanting to be there with us on Thursday, March 15th. Really excited about that. Randy Hall going back to the idea of defensive tackles. They certainly win championships. Doug Rayburn says that Nick Chubb's denial into the College Football Hall of Fame is going to be due to the fact that he's not a first-team All-American. Listen, that's a dumb rule. That's completely idiotic. I'm just like everybody else on that. Alan Verbanchik kind of weighing in on the same thing. Jarvis Hanna says, can Georgia offer the 5-star defensive tackle from Hawaii, the class of 2019? So Jarvis, smarten me up on this. That is the guy that played on Tua's high school back when Tua lived in Hawaii. Now his brother goes to high school in Alabama. But that's June Jones' team from out there in Hawaii. He's the 5-star guy. I think he's visited Alabama. I don't think Alabama's officially extended the offer. If I remember reading correctly on that, could Georgia get involved on that? I guess they probably could. But if you play with Tua, that's probably a pretty tough sell. For Georgia at that point in time. Michael McDaniel likes the idea of a rotating Tech rivalry. That's actually kind of an interesting idea. Maybe it's not one of these deals where Georgia never plays Georgia Tech, but no longer feels obligated to play it every single year. That may be interesting. Austin Strange kind of saying the same thing. That's not a bad idea, actually. Peter Jeffrey Wilson says, we're not playing Notre Dame every year. That's true, but what I'm hearing from Georgia fans is they would like to play teams like Notre Dame more often. It doesn't have to be Notre Dame, but, could it be Michigan? Could it be Ohio State? Could it be Texas? Could Georgia go to, I believe it's got a trip scheduled to UCLA, many years in the future. More games like that, I think, would be fun. And by the way, how much fun would it be to be back at the Rose Bowl Stadium at a certain point, kind of thinking in a regular season game, very different atmosphere, very different environment, but just kind of remembering back to what the 2018 version of the Rose Bowl had been. That'll be a lot of fun. Jeff Purcell said, we just did both this past year, Notre Dame and Georgia Tech. That is true. They did that both in the same year, but asking Georgia to do something that the rest of the SEC is not currently doing is probably not, I don't even want to use the word fair. Fair is in the eye of the beholder, but it's just not realistic to say the rest of the SEC plays one FBS out of conference team. Georgia's now going to start playing 2 every single season. I'd love to see it, but I don't think that's realistic to say Georgia's going to outpace the rest of the league in terms of its non-conference scheduling. Terrence Eberhardt says it just isn't enough. There just aren't enough elite defensive tackles to go around, to be honest. I guess we should go the high school route and start cross-training some of these 5-star linemen. So, Terrence, I thought Seth Emerson wrote a really good piece about this the other day, about how we see defensive tackles transition to offensive line, but we don't really see offensive linemen transition to defensive tackle, which goes back to the very point you were just making, that that there's just not enough defensive tackles. And one of the reasons why is because we ask our defensive tackles to be quicker than our offensive linemen. We don't ask our offensive linemen to be as fast as Deron Payne. We don't ask our guys to run like even, Devontae Wyatt's a great runner for a defensive tackle. It remains to be seen if he's going to have the big physical component of the game down. But as a runner, he's pretty good. He even played some running back for his high school team. So we ask defensive tackles to be fast in a way that we don't ask that from offensive linemen. So if you missed that, it was one of our questions of the day at DawgNation about position changes, likely position changes. The idea of Georgia's got a bunch of offensive linemen. Could you move them over to defensive line? And Seth, I think, rightly points out that you just don't see that transition as much. Lamont Gilliard can go from being defensive lineman to very good offensive lineman. There aren't as many examples of the other side of it. Jarvis Hanna bringing up Charles Baxter, the 1-star recruit. Yeah, listen, Charles Baxter's no better than a 1-star recruit. I can promise you on that. And for those of you who are wondering who Charles Baxter is, ask Jeff Santel about that. Randy Hall says Nate McBride's a modern-day Brian Bosworth, but that'd be nice. For a child of the 80s like me, Brian Bosworth is a big deal. Now, if you're young, you may not even remember who Brian Bosworth was, but a child of the 80s, boy, he was a big deal. He was like the defensive version of like Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, kind of all rolled into one. He was definitely on that. Gary and Christian Gulisano says, if I had to pick a freshman starter, a day one freshman starter, in my opinion, I mean, the easiest answer here is Jamari Salyer, right? I mean, Jeff raved on him yesterday. If there is a freshman starter, it's becoming harder to be a freshman starter at Georgia, by the way. But if there is one, I think that, oh gosh, I'm late. I think that Jamari is probably the best the best candidate. Junior Baker mentioning YouTube there in the comment section reminds me I have not checked in on YouTube during our comment portion of the time. Y'all got to stay on me on this too as well. I'm also late. We got to get ready to go here. Willie McGuire says that this is on YouTube. He thinks that Nate McBride could be the next Roquan. Hard Times 57 says I'd keep Georgia Tech and get rid of one of the non-Power 5 cupcakes, replace with another ACC team like Clemson, Florida State, or Miami. That's an interesting idea. Apologize for not getting more of the YouTube comments into our comment section. Y'all stay on me to make sure I'm saying hello to our friends over at YouTube, because we want you to be able to watch the show wherever you like it best, Facebook Live, YouTube, whatever. We're just glad you're here on DawgNation Daily today. I got to get ready to say goodbye for now. You can check out the Daily Double over at the forum at forum.dawgnation.com or in our link to our show page when we post the show at dawgnation.com. We'll have SEC Country Live at 3 p.m. Eastern Time this afternoon, the SEC Country Facebook page. We'll have the podcast up for you here in a moment, Apple Podcasts, all the other various podcast outlets. Back again tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for DawgNation Daily Live. I will say it's 115 degrees in the studio right now. But we are so glad that you are with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow again for the program. Thanks so much. Y'all have a great day.